Making sure my volume's up. Go ahead.
All right, we are live. All right, so welcome to the DJ the Money Coach Expert Interview Series, and this is the Leadership Edition. I'm Nick, and as always, I'm joined by DJ the Money Coach, the founder of the 7 Spheres of Money. DJ is out there living the pom-pom lifestyle, man. How's it going, DJ?
Man, it's going great. It's going great, Nick. How you doing? That's right. So we're out here live on location in Destin, Florida, enjoying a vacation celebration with my 2 sons who just graduated. One from high school at 16, and he's got a scholarship to University of Texas Engineering School. And one is 13, Nick, who's going to high school at 13. So we're excited. And most importantly, we're excited about our first guest to actually help us launch our live streaming podcast and also our live interview expert series. This gentleman is amazing, to say the least, Nick.
Great. So why don't you go ahead and give a brief introduction of who you are, DJ, and then bring on our expert.
Absolutely. So if anybody out there don't know who I am, I'm DJ the Money Coach, and my claim to fame is that at one point in time when I came out of college, I had a 525 credit score. I had $40,000 worth of consumable debt in addition to my student loans. But I read one book called The Road to Wealth. I actually read one chapter. It was called Credit. And within reading that one chapter about credit, I took my credit score to over 700 in 12 months. But then 24 months, my credit score rocketed to over 800. And my credit score has been over 800. Right now, it's at 806 for 15 straight years. And in 2002, I actually became consumer debt free. Everything I had my name on, Nick, I owned it outright. And in 2008, I became financially independent in America. What does that mean? I had a 6-figure income, passive income through business, real estate, and stocks. And I also became 7-figure net worth individual in America. And I have not been doing anything less than that since. But what I'm also most proud about is that I've sat down with over 20,000 people over the past 2 decades, started in my church, started teaching non-for-profit, started student schools, and started teaching businesses about the same practical application that I applied in what's called the 7 Spheres of Money system, which teaches people how to take accounting, banking, insurance, mortgages, financial planning, estate planning, legal, and small business practices and show them how to win in their own personal circle. In the process of doing that, Nick, I was able to help 100 people become financially independent, and I was able to help over thousands of people become consumer debt-free in America. So that's my story, and that's why we're great at doing this. And today, I want to introduce everybody in this launch to Mr. Marshall J. Taggart, who is the actual Chief Executive Officer of the Montgomery Regional Airport. And I'm proud to say that Marshall saw the value in our business model and actually hired us to help his employees. And Marshall is a well-accomplished individual that started out in the aviation business. And I met Marshall back in 2010. And it was amazing at a conference for the National Black Public Administrators. I was a vendor. Marshall at the time, I think, was working at Tallahassee Airport. And we kept in touch. We talked. And we're here today. And without further ado, I want you guys to know that you can do exactly what Marshall has accomplished if you just follow the template for success. So Marshall, again, I thank you for coming on to the show, my friend, and tell us about what you're excited about and tell us about your story, Marshall. How you doing today?
We're doing pretty good, man, and good to see both of you gentlemen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Excellent. Okay, well, first of all, let me say, Dale, I'm very proud of you and what you've done, man, and the example that you're setting, particularly in these United States, and particularly with the backdrop of what's happening here in America with a lot of the change, and people are articulating and saying no more, right? And I think it has to be done in terms of being in the streets, which I do support, and also in the suites, kind of like where I am, right? C-suites in the sense of where we are as it relates to letting people understand that financial and true freedom is done kind of a lot of different ways. And one in particular is an economic pathway to freedom. And that means looking at, as you sit in these roles of authority, how can you begin to understand and utilizing the ways of capitalism in this society and working around it, and also for all practical purposes, kind of exploiting that for your advantage to help your family. And exploitation doesn't mean using someone. It means really mastering your craft. And I think in this case, with you being the money coach, you've done that. I will say, there's no secret to any pathway to success. I wanted to be a public administrator coming out of graduate school. I didn't know specifically what I wanted to do, but I knew that having a slant in the perspective of my hue, being an African American, how can I deliver goods and services or quality programming to people in communities of color? And I chose my role to be in the area of air service. How can you begin to look at this travel industry and see, not just to be a consumer of travel, but to really kind of understand how it works, how you can impact pricing, how you can begin to understand how airports operate, because you don't see a lot of us in these roles. I serve as the executive airport director for a kind of a non-hub airport, and deals with it from a regional perspective in terms of where we're trying to go to 4 different destinations, primarily Atlanta, going to DC, to Dallas, and Charlotte. So those are the 4 places that Montgomery in which we go. So we fly to the hubs, and from there it takes you to your other destinations. So it requires for you to clearly understand about operations of an airport, to really understand about the basic managing non-aeronautical and aeronautical type of revenue sources. And that may be concessions, rental cars, understanding the whole gamut of being able to run an enterprise, because we don't turn a profit. What we do is we break even, and we use the revenues that we receive in order to be able to run and be self-sustaining. There are no tax dollars that pretty much run any airport in the country. It's all based on fees, charges from the airlines, and also to the concession, which is what it just says. It's a concession to be able to negotiate and have a way to essentially lower your bottom line. And I'm proud to say that through this COVID-19 perspective, we haven't had to lay off one staff member. We haven't had to furlough anyone. And that's due to astute management and understanding how to move things around. We did receive $2.5 million in the CARES grant, and we haven't touched it. And we're 90 days into the whole perspective. We also have an additional flight, or just kind of step back, all of our flights were cut. We went from 12 nonstops to 4. And so in this case, when you're trying to run already a small airport, and then you get cut even more with air service from the airlines, it makes it that much more difficult. And so I'm proud to say that July 1, we'll have one additional service that'll be added back for Atlanta. So that means we'll have 2 flights to Atlanta. We'll also be adding another flight to Dallas, July 1st. And also the DC service will be coming back August 1st. So that will bring us to 7. So that means we're over the amount of flights as it relates to what we had in the past. Now, when you look at the upward trajectory and you look at flattening the curve, as people talk about, we don't know what's going to be going on in September. They're saying there's supposed to be another hit of actual COVID-19 cases, and Montgomery County has become the number 1 place in Alabama where all these cases are concentrated, with Mobile being behind us. So, how do we begin to really make sure that your travel experience is a safe one? Well, for one, we rolled out all the plexiglass at all the stations. We have the little small round placards that are on the ground, which will tell you to encourage 6 feet distancing. We just came out with a press release today about 8 points that the TSA is going to be implementing, where they won't touch your ticket anymore. You won't be able to place your cell phones in a small round area. You have to put it in your carry-on bag. And these are things that will protect you in terms of making sure that you don't have the same type of components to deal with from a clean perspective. Speaking of clean, we clean every week. And we started out before this even hit, called Operation Clean Sweep, where we in turn went and did deep cleaning in our restrooms and all our handrails, our counters. So that's pretty much consistent in what we've done. But now we have overhead announcements that will be rolling out to let everybody know and remind people to maintain that 6 feet distance, making sure that you have gloves, masks, which we will be providing free. We're getting 17,000 masks from FEMA, which will supply to anybody that's flying out of the airport, anyone who's renting a car, anyone who comes to our customer service booth. And because we want to make sure people, fly safely. And that's why our tagline that we're rolling out, we're in this together. So I think when you talk about management and leadership, it's really from a place of caring and making sure that people can fly safe through an actual enterprise. And I'm just very happy. I'm the first African American who's been in this role. I don't really trip off of being first, but it is a big deal here for whatever reason, because they've never seen a person of color, particularly an African American male, being in a position to understand airports. I mean, I've been in airports for 20 years, so this is my sixth airport. I started out at Chicago Midway, moved to Hartsfield Jackson, the world's busiest. Then went to Tallahassee, short stint on the private side as an airport consultant, and then moved here. I'm sorry, let me step back. Moved to DeKalb Peachtree Airport as a deputy. I was a deputy in Tallahassee, and now I'm the executive airport director here in Montgomery Regional. So it's been a great ride. I've been able to work at airports that are owned by cities, airports that are owned by counties, airports that are owned, in this case, an airport authority. So I've seen all the different governmental structures, but there's one prevailing piece associated with that, and that's really having a sense of self and knowing who you are. And I bring my whole self to work, 100%. Dale approached me, and I think it's always important that we in turn make sure that we open the playing field for other individuals to be able to do business with things like airports. And I think when you talk about trying to educate your staff, because we were rolling into a new program associated with people understanding where their retirement will go, going through the retirement system of Alabama, it was very important that people were living pretty much paycheck to paycheck. And I think the educational component, when you hire someone to kind of have that one-on-one interaction and basically teach people on how to use their actual income to build wealth, that's what the DJ the Money Coach did for us. So we were very happy about that. It was an unprecedented approach. We've never had flexible spending accounts at our airport, which Stacy Fisher was able to help us with. We never had some of the services, and we also too lowered our life insurance premiums in terms of what people paid. So that pretty much really helped us out. We have a staff of roughly about 50 plus employees, and that to me was more invaluable coming on board here. I've been in this role for roughly a little bit over a year to provide people with that information before they made and elected that decision for their retirements. And that's the type of thing we need to have. We need to look for how can you have companies, entrepreneurs who can come in and assist and do critical assessments to basically move the organization forward. Prior to me getting here, we didn't have a mission statement, a vision statement. We didn't have goals. We didn't have core values. And that's what you really have to try to implement when you go into an organization to see how you can make it better. The goal is always to be a change agent, because that in turn pretty much equates to your value in the organization, particularly as the leader. And so I'm happy to say that I was able to do such in a year's time. Our performance was evaluated, and I'm happy to say, hey, I received a raise and also a bonus. So
congratulations.
Thank you. I must be doing it.
I thought you looked a lot more happier than I normally see you.
Yeah.
Well earned.
Thank you.
And with that said, Marshall, let me try to unpack some of the stuff that you said, because you touched on a couple of things. Number one, I want to unpack the fact that not only were you the first, and you and I, we don't get into that first thing, but we happen to be the first a lot of times to accomplish things in our profession. But with that said, what were some of the challenges or pushbacks that you were already accustomed to dealing with before you came into that environment? Because you had to educate me about how to relate to people down there, because I'm a northerner, as you were telling me multiple times, because I'm assertive. And I'm proud to be assertive, because our practice was called the 4 Ps: professionalism, persistence, perseverance, and I produce when I get an opportunity to produce that has nothing to do with the color of my skin. So unpack that for us, especially for that young Black man and that young Black woman, that somebody's in high school, going to college, kind of like Courtney. We had the benefit of interviewing your intern who now got that great job with the Air Force. Courtney, can you unpack that for me real quickly, Marshall?
Well, I think in this case, I mean, I prescribe to those 4 items too. I'm just as assertive, just as, but I think when you get in an environment, understanding the environment that you're in. I mean, this is the old South, right? Montgomery started the boycott. If you're not familiar, if you want to do a civics lesson, Rosa Parks sat down, right, so we can stand up. So fast forward 50 years, 65 years. We, in turn, ironically, I got appointed starting May 15th of last year. And then roughly less than 7 months later, here we have an African-American young man who's a native of Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
He became mayor of the city. So a lot of change has taken place in the last, year or so. And to have someone running the airport who is an African-American, and then an African-American mayor, a lot of these first, him being the first African-American after 200 plus years of Alabama's existence, it's catching a lot of people off guard. And I think when you do that, you have to clearly understand, okay, how do you in turn approach a situation to where you still can accomplish the goal, starting with the end in mind, but at the same time, not be so forceful to tell you will. In Detroit, in Chicago, which I've lived in these locations, Chicago that is, I mean, you have to be assertive. You have to say what you want, because a closed mouth doesn't get fed.
Right.
In Cook County, in Chicago, I know for a fact. And so around here, it's just a little bit more slower, a little bit more subtler, and you still get what you need, but at the same time, you can't really push people per se. And I think in this regard, that's just a matter of understanding, like I said, that dichotomy of being, in the suites. You have to do it in such a way where you're, one, educating the masses to let them understand, present it in such a way where it's a who moved my cheese type scenario.
Oh, love that book.
Right. So the thought process is, you set the bar high, okay, and then you just let people meet that expectation. Now, from the staff perspective, we've done leaps and bounds in terms of culture, of really implementing the culture, and people are pretty much through that maze, and they're getting all kind of cheese, right? Limburger, mozzarella, anything they want to survive. But of course, when you talk about the policymakers, because we run the day-to-day, you talk about the board members, there are certain board members who are still kind of stuck in this mindset of where they are running the day-to-day or trying to run the day-to-day aspects. And of course, that's what you hire me for. So of course, there's going to be some type of conflict when you look at change. And it's been mentioned to me that, hey, it seems like he hires our only African Americans. Hey, it seems like he only goes for minority organizations and contractors. Well, guess what? There is something called ACDBE, Airport Concessions Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, because we receive the money. And there's also DBE. We have to make these numbers, right? They're not set asides, but what they say is if I receive federal funding, I in turn have to comply with what the FAA states. And that's never been talked about here, right? And so when you're trying to be in compliance, because at the end of the day, I'm the person who's going to be responsible. I have to answer the question when the microphone is in front of my face, so in terms, it's a matter of going through this change process for certain members to clearly understand it's good for business to embrace diversity, right? It's good
It's great for business. Right. Pardon me for interjecting right here, but one thing I was doing, Marshall, in the past week, and I want to commend you that you are ahead of the curve before all this stuff that's happening right now in our society. By the simple fact, I mean, it takes a courageous attitude and a leadership mindset for you to even embrace me to bring this program down to Montgomery last year. And right now, I'm trying to reach out to people that are in the C-suite like you and say, forget about you looking for fair, because fair is where pigs get slaughtered and people win gifts. Why don't you look for equity and justice? And how does that equate? That equates to people in the C-suite look at their vendor list and find people that look like us that are qualified to do the job. In addition to that, what you just said, you have to be in compliance anyway. So why aren't we doing that? And you have been a pioneer in that regard before it even is, important right now to what's going on. So how do you get that word out to your peers in the same industry or in other industries that are in the C-suite to understand that's where the impact is? Not only hire Black qualified individuals at the airport, but do business to business with Black enterprises that are qualified, because that's the leveling of the playing field, and that'll flatten the curve for us. How do you do that? Because you're already doing it. You're a pioneer. You've been doing it ever since I met you.
Well, I appreciate that. It's really a personal conviction, but it's also organizations that you belong to. When you in turn, as you come up through the ranks, people help you and assist you and pretty much give the mantra and the culture associated. That's how we met at the National Forum for Black Public Administrators, which I've been a member since 1995, since I was in college at the age of 23, 24. And so then you look at other organizations like the one I referred you to, Dale, was the Airport Minority Advisory Council. Those individuals are really put in place to really understand how do you begin to have Black concessionaires. I mean, let's look at this. Maynard Jackson, when he became mayor in 1973, they had only 1% of the contracts went to minorities. And at that time, you had the Equal Opportunity Commission coming on board. You had all the things in terms of diversity. Remember this term, affirmative action? That was pretty much the onset in terms of trying to equalize the playing field for the vestiges of what took place in the past of racism and all the different things that kind of held back a people. And so when you look at these aspects now, things have morphed, they've been challenged, but you still have to in turn adhere. And not because you got to adhere, you do it because it's the right thing to do. Look at all the corporations now who are jumping on the bandwagon. Look at the NFL who's coming out saying that Colin was correct, right? Roger Goodell is ready to basically bring him back to play and offer an apology. The thought process is, why not in turn embrace it on its onset? Because at the end of the day, all your customers and my consumers, and also too, looking at the demographics of Montgomery, I have to play to not just one sector, one zip code who chooses to fly to this airport. I have to look at all the patrons that come through here because they're all our customers. And you can't just look at it from a perspective of just race. You also have to, which is, by the way, is a construct because we're all one people. It's a human race. Let's be clear.
Exactly.
But for the folks that have this melanin in their skin, right? You have to look at it and dissect it from that too. You have to look at sexual orientation. You have to look at gender, but you also have to look at age because that's another factor. Millennials don't use the same choices that baby boomers or Generation X does. So if you don't know your customer and you don't know your clientele, you're never going to grow the enterprise. And I'm proud to say that we finished a project of a $1.2 million project, which was a DBE, met all of its goals on time, on budget for the taxiway Alpha here at our airport, which was roughly about a 9,000 foot taxiway, which we in turn refurbished. The other piece of that is the air service, and then the services that we want to offer to people that are coming to this airport. That means down to the minute detail, let's take the people picking cotton off of the walls of the airport in the concourse. That's what I had to really look at because that may be offensive. Let's make sure we don't do certain things that may offend Jewish Americans or Asian Americans that fly through this airport, which I did see. And I said, guys, slowly take that off the wall, which they're no longer here now. But you want to make sure you comply with that because these are our paying customers and we don't want to offend anyone who's flying out here. And so I think with making some of these changes and making sure we definitely can relate to all neighborhoods in Montgomery, I'm proud to say that to me would be my legacy. Besides anything else, the first really doesn't matter to me. It's really doing the right thing to move the organization forward.
Man, that's awesome. I mean, you talking about Maynard Jackson, and I'd be remiss if I don't talk about Marion Barry.
Oh yeah.
What happened in his personal life. Marion Barry made things happen in DC that a lot of people don't realize. Without him, he forced people to do business with people that look like us, again, that were qualified, and most times overqualified, in my humble opinion. So if we can start getting that message out, Marshall, which you have been doing right now, I think we'll level the playing field, because when an idea time is due, you can't stop it. It's going to happen anyway. But if we don't enable ourselves to get people in positions that are in the C-suite, get people who are vendors like us together to just have a conversation. At the end of the day, that's all I asked you for. I said, hey, Marshall, congratulations on LinkedIn. No, we haven't spoken in a while, but all I want to do is have a conversation for you to tell me no. That was it. And if I wasn't qualified, I didn't take it personal. But fortunately, we were qualified. We were able to do some great things together, and hopefully we'll continue to do some great things together. So talk to that young person that's a junior, senior in college right now, and tell them what pathway they should take from an educational standpoint and a mentorship standpoint. Because, man, you even opened up my eyes and made me start thinking about developing, younger people. And reason why Nick is on my team, because I saw the people you had that you were mentoring, and I have to, say I wasn't doing that at the point you and I met, because I was a little frustrated. 10, 15 years ago, I used to do a lot of work in the community Title I schools, and the mothers and the grandparents, they didn't appreciate my time or my money. So I said, you know what? Skip this. I have children. I'm going to invest my time in my children. But when I came down there to Montgomery, Alabama, and I saw you had these young, sharp black men, black women that you were taking under your umbrella and mentoring them, man, I felt ashamed that I wasn't doing it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make a point to do that. And so much so, on DJ the Money Coach team, we have 9 people that are between age 25 to 32 that I'm taking under my wing to mentor them and show them this industry. So again, thank you for doing that, and lay that template for that junior and that senior in college of what route they should take educationally and mentorship. Because Courtney talked a lot about the networking that he learned from you and how it got him that Air Force job.
That's right. Well, the thought process is lift as we climb, right? We climb up the ladder, and we are lifted, but we have to basically lift other people behind you. And what I always try to tell, and you mentioned Courtney, who was one of my interns. I had actually 4, and I'll tell you a story. I hired 4 African American interns, and I also hired 3 Caucasian interns. The 4 interns, one of them left and went back to school, Kennedy, who's now going to be a rising senior. She majored in marketing. And then I had 3 males, 2 from Alabama State and then 1 from Auburn. Those 2 young men, one graduated with a bachelor's, Stavosky graduated with a bachelor's in political science. The other one, Courtney, who you mentioned, graduated with a bachelor's in finance, and now he's working at Maxwell Air Force Base as a civilian contract specialist. Stavosky's going to school, Jacksonville State here in Alabama, to get his master's in public administration. The 4th one, Matt, master's in communication from Auburn University, he's still working here as a wheelchair assist, and he's scheduled to hopefully come on board to serve as a security coordinator for me. So again, providing the opportunity, if people want to, from that perspective, for us to be able to bring up individuals and give them that opportunity to be exposed to airports, because a lot of us are not in this industry. The other side of the house, I had equally interviewed a young lady, saw her at the one of the restaurants, and I thought she'd be great for marketing. She came in and she was working on nursing at AUM. She decided not to come. The other piece offered another gentleman who was working on aviation management at Auburn. He was a great fit. He came in and was going to work in operations, maintenance, and security here at our airport. He never showed up for the position. And then the third one, a young guy who was a former Marine who worked at Trenton College and was a student there. He came in to interview with us, and he got the position working in that role. Very, very sharp individual. And then when the COVID-19 hit, I had to in turn reduce the hours and eventually phase out the hours for my interns. He got upset. And
keep going. I got to plug my computer in. But keep going.
No problem. He got upset and he quit. And so I think, when you look at the opportunity to provide for all types of individuals, whether they be black or white, male or female, I'm a firm believer that, as you lift yourself in these positions, you have to kind of reach back and pull people up along with you. And I'm proud to say that those individuals are doing well professionally. We keep in touch. And now for the summer, I have two new interns. They just so happen to be African American, one male, one female. One attends Georgia State Middle University in Macon, Georgia. He's trying to become an airport director or pilot. And then the other young lady, she's at Alabama State, bachelor's in accounting. And they're doing extremely well. We've got two projects that they're working on to do our fixed assets for both an internal and external perspective. And that's what you have to do. Now, have I caught some eye of concern? Why are we spending this money? Why are we doing this? Yeah, I have. But I think, with me being able to explain my rationale, that we have to do so. Because as I took these interns around the city, they became ambassadors for the airport and they sold the airport. We went in church pulpits where I actually spoke. I went around to different neighborhoods, basically talk about airports, talk about careers in aviation. But what that did, that allowed people to come and to fly for the very first time. Some people had never been to this airport and they grew up in Montgomery. And so it had dual purposes, but more importantly, my role is to really influence people that are coming behind me because somebody did it for me. The general manager for Ben DaCosta at Hartsfield-Jackson was one of my mentors. Thomas Walker, who ran O'Hare Airport, both African-American males, took the time to really tell me. And I'll tell you, Ben showed it best because the folks that are working for him, he has the gentleman who's running Seattle's airport, Lance Little. He has Mario Diaz, who's running Houston's airport. He has me running Montgomery. Ted Kitchens is running Manchester. So I think when you talk about what people do, you never know the impact that you make. And so that's why my perspective is it's not about black or white. It's really to really try to bring folks together. So I applaud you. I'm glad that you are doing that because to me, that's going to be your legacy. It's not about how much money you make or what kind of bow ties you wear, right? Nobody cares about that 20 years from now. It's really the impact that you made. And I'm glad that you're talking to Courtney. I'm very proud of Courtney. I think he's a young man who's going to go places, and he's in a dilemma right now because he didn't know if he was going to go to graduate school, if he was going to be the legacy builder for his father's business, because they own a fine clothing store here in Montgomery, or if he was going to, definitely go to work. And so I think in that regard, I'm glad that I was able to serve as a role model to let him just see exactly this is what he could potentially become. And that was
that's amazing. Like I said, we interviewed him and I was like, to me, that was probably the best interview we did, Marshall, because, how do we impact our society for generations? By getting the people behind us. How important is it for us to have our children go to historically black colleges and universities at this moment in society? How important that is, you being an alumni of one of the HBCUs?
Yeah, Clark CAU. That's my alma mater. I say this, I think it's very important. I'm getting some feedback, Nick, too, so you may want to just check that. Okay, it's better. In this case, I think when I look at going to an HBCU, it's kind of like baking a cake, right? And so you know how the cake is going to turn out, but you don't know what goes in the cake. So when you put in the eggs, right, you put in the yeast, the baking soda, all of the ingredients that you put in, and then you start to mix it up and stir it up, right? It gets substantive. You begin to understand the batter makes the foundation of who and what you are. And so when you begin to build that, you also have layers. And so you kind of put the icing in between and you put the next layer, and then you build that cake, right? And then you dress it up and you put what needs to be on the top, the icing. And so you have to look at what are HBCUs, what are the purposes of HBCUs? And that foundation makes you build from that perspective. My son, who's also dual degree engineering. He's finished all of his actual requirements for physics at Clark Atlanta University, and now he's at North Carolina A&T. He'll finish that in the spring of 21. He'll come out with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I think the best thing for him in terms of him getting this, he's really gained a true sense of self. I've been able to see him and his mother also too. My wife is a graduate of Clark Atlanta, and so we basically are looking at the whole aspect of legacies. And if you're really trying to make a difference in this case of trying to determine how do you impact what's happening in the backdrop of what's happening now, send your kid to an HBCU, because therefore you're supporting institutions that were built for you. It's kind of like black banks, putting your money in a black bank, or putting it, or going to buy black, or investing in what we did with Dale, with your company, trusting that people have the knowledge and the skill set to be able to do and replicate that type. So we're highly satisfied with the service that we receive from the Money Coach. But also too, I think when you have that tradition of understanding why you in turn invest in HBCU, simple, you're investing in yourself.
Right.
So why not do that? I mean, and I'm not knocking anybody that went to PWIs, because that cake analogy, that icing you put on top of the cake, that's when you go to a PWI. Go get your master's and go get a professional degree from some of these other institutions. But get the foundation. That's my thought process with that.
Absolutely. Hey, I know you don't have much time because you're very busy running that major airport there. So I want to wrap it up in the next 3 to 5 minutes. Talk about, tell us 1 or 2 books you're reading right now, and tell us what you're excited about in the next 6 months. I know you were telling me how you were going to bring in some other major carriers into the Montgomery Regional Airport. Has that come to fruition yet? And if not, how long will happen? And the other thing is, talk to them as we wrap this up, how important it is to stick to your game plan regardless of what's going on in the world, because we're going to come in and out of pandemics, tragedies, celebrations, but business got to continue to move forward, because if it doesn't, you're not running a business, in my humble opinion. If DJ the Money Coach can't do the show, guess what? Nick will step up and do the show, because DJ the Money Coach is an enterprise. It's not DJ.
Right. Well, I think that you have to stay focused and have a plan. With our air service development strategy, we're still looking at having a legacy carrier added, hopefully United. But United just posted its profit, which they didn't receive a profit. They pretty much talked about a loss. But in terms of what United provides, SkyWest is an opportunity for them to go to certain destinations like Chicago, to Houston, and to other locations. And I think that's going to be beneficial when you talk about adding additional routes, providing services for people to fly to these areas direct. Me, in terms of me reading actual books, I'm currently right now writing my dissertation, because I'm pretty much away. I'm ABD for political science. And so I have 4 cohorts. So I'm writing on pretty much about cityhood and the cityhood movement in Metro Atlanta, about how all of these cities became to be. So I'm reading those books, but also too, I find time to kind of sneak and read for pleasure, reading the autobiography of Thurgood Marshall, just kind of understand all these people, Vernon Joyner, Vernon Can Reed. These books kind of influenced me to say, okay, how did these men go from their humble beginnings and also go through overt racism, and then in turn become successful in their fields, and how do they hone their crafts, and all the things that they had to go through of being the first, And so when I kind of look at some of the things that I'm dealing with, some of the comments I hear from either board members or even passengers, even people that live here in Montgomery, Selma, or any other place, I begin to understand that, a lot of people they just don't know, and they're ignorant, right? And ignorant doesn't mean they're dumb or stupid. What it means is they just don't know. They're not educated to the fact about how things are. And I think me coming on board, I I think it was a godsend, to be honest. I mean, for me to be in this role, in this position, and really kind of move the needle and kind of put my footprint on this aspect, it's going to help us out tremendously as we begin to grow. So we have a lot of work to do. We're negotiating and looking at an FBO for our airport, a fixed-based operator. They pretty much do provide jets or private jets. In this case, that type of service. We're trying to bring them up to speed. We're also looking at new parking equipment to increase the parking experience at our airport. We're also looking at hopefully implementing something where we can call Thanks Again, where we can begin to tell people thank you for flying and use technology to do so. So it's a lot of things that we want to implement that we're working on and trying to definitely partner with the board. It's really to bring those mindsets, because the average age of board members that I have, they're roughly in their 60s or 70s, right?
Wow.
Yeah, them understanding, because they're appointed by the city council.
Okay.
So you don't have a understanding of what it means to fly. Some of them haven't flown. Some of them don't know what some of the major technologies and in terms of things that are in and around the airports. And that means getting out to conferences, interacting with people like yourself to kind of understand what's out here. And I think as we begin to grow and we kind of expose individuals and people begin to understand more about my management style and me understanding their areas of expertise, things will come to flow a lot better. We do have a master plan that we're rolling out, and that's starting to come about at this time. And so you'll see some changes that are taking place. Consolidated rental-car facility, like I said, a new FBO, a new baggage carousel, more routes. That's what's needed for the entire river region to be able to thrive here in Montgomery. And I think my understanding and the uniqueness that I bring to the table with 20 plus years of experience, coupled with the board's understanding about the culture of the Montgomery area, we'll be able to accomplish a lot. So I'm optimistic about that.
That is awesome. So where can we contact you in terms of the airport itself? Can you give us that information, Marshall, and we'll put that down and the links below. We always do that with each one of our guests. Also, I want to thank you for being the first person to help kick off this premier podcast and streaming expert financial series with DJ the Money Coach, because, man, we want to start with all stars, but at the same time, we want to let people know that you're not the exception to the rule. You are the rule. In my inner circle, everybody is successful just like you, and that's the norm in our community, but we don't know. And just like you showed me, I didn't know how many people that were Black that were doing great things in aviation inside the industry. I knew about people who flew, but not on the business side, to be honest with you. So I really appreciate the fact you turned me on to AMAC, and you showed me a lot of things. And now I'm excited about working with AMAC and doing other things in financial education across the landscape. So where can we reach you at, Marshall? And so the people can know how to find your airport and the great things you continue to do.
Well, good. And we have two other African-American male airport directors in the state of Alabama. One is running Mobile, Chris Curry, and the other one, Ron Mathau, is running Birmingham's airport. So it's three of us that are here. Out of the 6 commercial airports, 3 of us are African-American. And that's a great feat, particularly at the same time, right? We're all members of COMTO, the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials, and we're also members of AMAC. But in order to reach me, Montgomery Airport, you can reach me at 334-281-5040. Again, 334 is the area code, 281-5040. So if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to provide, I don't mind reaching back out to you. Just leave a message here when it goes through, and they'll dispatch it and put it on my voicemail, and I'll give you a call back. Did we lose Bill?
I think so. His video went out.
Okay.
That's okay. We're at the end, so I'll just close it out. Thank you for your time, Mr. Taggart, and thank you for taking young people under your wing and giving them opportunities and exposing them to the aviation industry. And I can also attest to the impact and the necessity of HBCUs. I'm a graduate of Howard University myself.
The real HU, right?
Yeah. So I can definitely attest to the significance of having our HBCUs. And just the key takeaways that I took from your conversation is that one, you applied the four P's and took your company from being good to being great.
That's right, Jim Collins. Yes, sir.
Right. And the next thing is that you showed the importance of lifting as we climb. Going back to opening up our business to work with others.
Right.
Very important. And the last thing is, staying focused and sticking to the game plan, because business doesn't stop.
You got to stay focused and keep it moving.
Absolutely. So thank you again for joining us. I'll close out how DJ always close out. I wish you a pom-pom lifestyle that's plenty of money and peace of mind, and we invite you to join us on the Beaches of the World Club, because after you leave here, you can't take it with you.
That's right. You absolutely.
That's right.
I appreciate that. Good advice. That's great. All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the viewers for watching us, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Take care. All right.